Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Tailgate Debate. I am Anthony, and I am flying solo tonight. Zach and Jamie had some other obligations, according to their report. So that's what happens when your social group is made up primarily of moist vaginas. So we'll be without the moisties tonight. So I wanted to touch base just to do a little midweek update on the two big matchups we'll be looking at this weekend. The first one is Tennessee and Georgia. Obviously, this is the biggest game of the weekend, biggest game at this point for college football. Playoff rankings came out. Got Tennessee at number one, Georgia at number three. Georgia probably should have been number one or number two. Tennessee one or two. Ohio State three. They had Clemson fourth. Clemson really didn't belong in the top four, I don't think. I think Michigan probably should have been there. And then TCU, I think, got hosed pretty good, being behind a one-loss Alabama team that has a decent resume but has a loss and also has a really close game against Texas. So it's also had some struggles of their own. But that's that. So Tennessee number one will be playing playing Georgia number three. So watching a lot of the shows this week, the consensus seems to be that Tennessee's offense versus Georgia's defense is going to be what decides the game. That's probably true, but I think there's a lot of misinformation going on, and so the facts have come out that Tennessee, while it appears that they throw the ball more, actually runs the ball more, and Georgia's the opposite. While it appears they run the ball more, they actually throw the ball more. So those things are true, right? So factually speaking, those teams are actually performing in a way that you wouldn't expect. But what's really not being reported is the reality of the situation. Tennessee is running the ball truly to set up the big play. We are living. Tennessee is living off the big play, and that's really what everything else is designed to do, is to get those big plays that are really demoralizing and defeating to a defense. And then Georgia, on the opposite, is doing a lot of mid-range passes. They actually lead the country in 10-yard passes. I think between 10 and 20 or something like that. But really, when you watch the highlights of Georgia, and I watched a little bit before I checked in tonight, I wanted to sort of see, what it is that their offense is looking like. The reality is that they are passing the ball a fair amount, but really where they're doing the damage is when they run the ball. So the runs that they hit might not be for 40, 50, 60 yards. They might not be running for 200 yards a game, but the runs they hit, they come in chunks, 15, 20, 25 yards, and they come at critical points in the game. So Georgia is still really relying heavily on hitting you with those big run plays, and Tennessee obviously is looking to hit those deep pass plays down the field. So the statistics a little bit deceptive there in terms of what the teams want to do versus what they're doing in terms of setting it up. But it should be a good matchup. All the odds seem to be favoring Georgia. Georgia 8-point favorite. The early odds had them at 11.5. I think the opening odds had them at about a 9, and I think it's rested right now, right around the 8, right around 8.5. Same thing. Alabama was favored by, and when we jumped on Alabama 28-10. Alabama obviously fought back. They have a Heisman quarterback, made it a game, and so that was ended up being a shootout, and which is kind of what you would expect with a team like Alabama. I don't know that if Tennessee is able to jump out the same way on Georgia, that Stetson Bennett can put together a performance like Bryce Young did, or that they have the weapons on the outside. So they do a lot more of their passing damage to the tight ends, and that's been Georgia for the past several years, and they do some serious damage with those tight ends. But if Tennessee gets off to a hot start like they have, I don't know how well that looks for Georgia in terms of some sort of comeback game. Now they did come back against Missouri earlier this season. They trailed most of that game until the fourth quarter, but they were only down. The largest margin I think was 13-0, and that was in the first half. So they had the entire second half to sort of chip away at that lead, and then they were able to do that successfully. to win by 4, 26-22, I think was the final against Missouri. Obviously, little different story scenario with an offense like Tennessee that's going to try to bury them if they get up 10, 13, 14. They're not going to let them take the brakes off. So really is a good matchup, an intriguing matchup. All the experts on TV, which are really just a boatload of dumbasses, are taking Georgia. That's not a surprise. Nothing to be offended by. Georgia is the reigning defending champion. Everybody says, "Well, it doesn't matter. That was last year." It does matter. Georgia's a good team. They brought back a fair amount of players. They have a lot of 4 and 5 stars that they're bringing in. They might be a little bit younger. They might not be as solid as they were last year, but they're still one of the most talented rosters in the country, and obviously one of the best teams in the country. So that does matter that they're the reigning national champion. I like this Georgia team, but I don't like them to beat Tennessee. I actually on our preview on Monday, I said that I didn't have a score prediction. And I still don't know that I want to get into a score prediction. This is a tough game, I think, to predict. But I do think that Tennessee wins convincingly. I think that some of the struggles Georgia has had on offense have been masked recently by playing teams that aren't quite as solid offensively, can't keep pace. And so Georgia's getting more possessions to do something with the ball. The games I watched against Auburn, against Missouri, there was another game I watched. They really, other than Oregon and Florida, I don't really see them jump out on a fast start. So it doesn't look like they're scoring a bunch of points early. They're not that kind of team that just punches you in the mouth on that first or second drive. And I think that's a problem because Tennessee is. And so if Tennessee jumps out and smacks them in the face just like they have everybody else, it really is a wake-up call. And then you got to see how Georgia responds versus how does Tennessee respond to the crowd and that sort of thing. So those early possessions, I think, are very important. Against Auburn, Georgia didn't score, I don't think, until the second quarter. I actually think Tennessee's defense is better than Auburn's, or offense is way better than Auburn's. So now, again, every matchup is different. You don't know what the mentality of the team was in that game, so you can only go off what you see. But I do think it's a great sign for Tennessee, some of these offensive struggles. The turnovers, Georgia's neutral on the season. They've given it away 9. They've taken 9. Tennessee, I think, is +7 or something like that, or maybe +10. So Tennessee's done pretty good in the turnover department. Penalties, Tennessee's doing terrible. We're second worst in the SEC, I think, besides Alabama, who's the worst. And Alabama is second best, I think. They don't commit very many penalties. So Georgia, very disciplined team, unlike Alabama that came into Neyland that was really a little bit of a mess in terms of discipline. So Georgia will be a better team than Alabama on the field in terms of how they play, talent-wise, comparable. And it really should turn into a good game. I think a good game for us because I think we blow them out. So that's my prediction for the Tennessee game is that we put some early strain on Bennett to score some points, and really start to create some turnovers and run away with it in the second half. That's kind of how I see it going. I'm biased. Don't listen to me. Whatever. All that hinges on the notion that Tennessee must stop the run with Georgia. I know everybody's been talking about how great Bennett is, and they actually pass more than they run, and blah 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 blah. I get all that bullshit, but the key in every football game really is to stop the run, right? Make the team one dimensional. But I think if they take away our run early, I do think we can pass our way around that because of the weapons that we have, and the style of offense that we run. I don't think Georgia can. If we're able to contain the run and the game really relies on Bennett, he's certainly capable, but not somebody that I would call consistently capable. So if you put the game on Bennett's shoulders, I do think I think that's problematic for Georgia in the long run. Not to say that Bennett can't get it done. We've seen him light people up, but I do like it if we can really force him to win the game versus letting them kind of eat us up on the ground. So making them one-dimensional is going to be critical. And then I think our defense will hold up okay. We're getting criticized a lot in the media with our secondary and and how bad our defense is and where it ranks. I think sometimes those things are a little bit misleading. If you look at our schedule, we played some pretty tough teams, some very good quarterbacks. Yeah, maybe we've made some of them look a little better than they actually are. Anthony Richardson is a case in point there, who had his best game against us. And but again, they were trailing the whole game. Florida played with a mentality that they were going to throw everything at Tennessee. A lot of those passes, Anthony Richard hit. I mean, if we play Florida again, I don't think he hits all those passes like he did in that game. I think he played out of his mind, and good for him. Um, but at the end of the day, Florida was down 17 with 7 minutes left, and a lot of those yards came on a prevent defense. And so again, you got to watch how much you read into that. Not to take away from Richardson's game, it was a good game, and that was a great game that we got to be at and take a look at. But long time ago, we're focused on next week. So my prediction: Tennessee blows out Georgia. I think this is a wake up call for everybody else to get on board. That everybody's been talking since Alabama won. Well, what happens when to the playoff when Tennessee loses to Georgia? Well, I think you need to start asking the question: what happens to Georgia when Tennessee goes in there and smokes their ass? And so this will be a nice wake up call for the rest of the nation. Everybody in Tennessee country already knows what's going on. There seems to be a lot of people who still haven't quite figured it out. So that should be a good game. The second game to touch on is Notre Dame Clemson. This has become a very intriguing game, not only for Notre Dame season. Obviously, Jamie is a Notre Dame guy on our podcast here. He's one of our moisties that didn't make it tonight. So having Notre Dame playing Clemson's a big deal. Clemson obviously undefeated, came in fourth in the playoff ranking. Total bullshit, but they did, and they're holding that spot. And so for Notre Dame to get a win here, not only would go a long way for Notre Dame in terms of their trajectory of their season and getting things kind of turned around and looking a little more stable under Marcus Freeman, but also in terms of opening up another spot in the playoff. I think most people would agree. I certainly feel that if Clemson loses any games, that the ACC is absolutely eliminated from playoff contention. It's just not a very good conference. And so that's why I think this is most people think this is a pivotal game. I actually think Notre Dame is going to win, not only because I want them to win, but I think that their style of play is going to really stifle Clemson's offense, and Clemson really hasn't had a very effective offense this season. And so I think Notre Dame will really kind of have their way defensively, and then it's just a matter of who can pound out some yards on the ground, some play action throws down the field, and then start to get some points, accumulate some points. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, so field goals are going to matter. Hopefully Marcus Freeman doesn't do some of this stupid shit that these other coaches are doing, where they pass up the field goal to go for the fourth down and all this fucking nonsense. Red zone is going to be important to take the points and get the hell out of Dodge. I like Notre Dame to win a very low scoring game. If any team scores over 30, it's absolutely a wrap. But I actually think the team that gets to 20 is the winner. I think this will be extremely low scoring, but looking forward to a good win for Notre Dame. So that's going to be it. This is just a short midweek update. Wanted to make sure that we stayed on schedule the way that Tennessee will on first down and Athens on Saturday night. They're gonna have to rewrite that song because this Saturday is the night the lights go out in that motherfucker. But anyways, this is our little midweek check-in. The Moisties will be back with us on the follow-up review once we finish the college football weekend. So on behalf of Moisty 1, I will say go Irish. On behalf of Moisty 2 and the rest of Big Orange Nation, go Vols. Talk to you Monday.